Hey everybody, and welcome back to the channel. I'm so sorry that it has been a very long time since I was actually able to post a video. As many of you who are going through the insanities that 2020 has brought all of us, so is our life. Our life has been pretty hectic, but not necessarily bad, just hectic. We have been, I think, navigating through the spikes and surges of COVID-19, especially here in Texas, and trying to understand what is ahead of us and what is going on. So without further ado, I'm going to provide you guys some insight on adopting a teenager, finalizing that adoption, and how are we as a family going to move forward with COVID-19. Okay, so like I said, this video is more or less going to be kind of an updated video where I'm going to talk a little bit about what it's been like, trying to adopt a teenager, what the finalization of adopting a teenager is like, and also just kind of give a little family update on how we're moving forward with COVID-19 and what are some things that we're thinking about, looking ahead on with the school, trying to reopen in the fall. That's just kind of in a nutshell what this video is going to be about. So let's start off first with what most people really want to understand. And I probably get a lot of questions all the time, especially whenever anyone asks or finds out and then asks, what is it like adopting a teenager? And, we get so many questions and statements. What is it like adopting a teenager? Why did you guys try to skip ahead and not go through all the hard stuff? You guys just wanted it easy. We've had so many different comments and responses. It's been a little odd. My husband will tell you he was doing a happy hour with his job the other day, and the comments weren't negative, but they were, a little bit comical for us because they were just like kind of eye-opening type statements. So first of all, to answer those few questions or reply to some of those statements, what is it like adopting a teenager? So I will tell you that like any child, like any infant, no child, no baby is the same. So that is at least consistent. Every single teenager that comes in, regardless of their trauma, regardless of any abuse or neglect, regardless if they do or they don't have visible signs or an official diagnosis of PTSD, every teenager is different. Every teenager's reaction to their past is different, and how they process that and how it affects them is different. I will say that the only consistent aspect of bringing a teenager into your home that has been in foster care and you have the intention of adopting this teenager, I will say that the only similar aspect that my husband and I have seen is regression, emotional regression. And now our teenage daughter is even starting to become more self-aware of that. And she seems to be accepting that, at least as part of her truth. And it wasn't like that was something we tried to drive home with her. It was just, her overhearing conversations between my husband and I, but also, I think my husband and I individually and together pointing that out to her. And again, that wasn't us pointing it out in a shameful or guilt-ridden way. It was more such as when she would make comments along the lines of, oh, I really enjoy hanging out with this cousin. I really enjoy hanging out with this family friend, or at least the family friend's child. And they're, say in 7th and 8th grade, and she's relating to them more than she feels able to be relating to, say, peers among her age and grade level. And so that, that kind of opens that window in conversation for my husband and I to have those conversations with our daughter, where we begin to, help her understand from a psychological standpoint, well, here's why that is. And it's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. And it's the same thing as when we invested time with her with occupational therapy, psych therapy, speech therapy, and we're going to be starting physical therapy soon. These are all things that we had to explain to her that, when kids come from a hard place, they're going to be missing pieces to the puzzle, and that puzzle that makes them who they are. So we need to make sure that we provide, that child, that person, that individual, ways to fill in the pieces to their puzzle. And I will say that I give thanks, probably daily now. And not that I didn't before, but I definitely practice gratefulness daily. That our daughter really, for the most part, has been a lot more open and receptive than we have heard from other families who were in the process of adopting a teen, or were considering adopting a teen. And perhaps they were fostering or providing respite care. So there's kind of that, that gray area that you have to kind of consider. And that's not to say that our daughter has been, completely receptive and open to every aspect of therapy or all of the different resources that we've been providing her. And sometimes I think she feels like we're just throwing at her head. There's been a lot of pushback, and trauma definitely does play a part in that pushback. And it is hard to rewire the brain, I think, for any age. And it does get harder as they get older, but it's not impossible. And that is something that I really wanted to come on here and say, because the common statement that I keep reading over and over and over on any internet platform is that, there's this myth, I guess, I call it a myth, where there are a lot of people who think that the younger they are, the more malleable they are, the easier it'll be to raise them up the way you want them to be raised. And by no means am I here to try to convince you or anyone that, you should shuck off the younglings. For all of you Star Wars fans out there, there's a little tribute there. So this is not to encourage anybody to shuck off the young kids and just go for the older kids, but this is to try to provide, I guess the best term would be insight, perspective, because with our daughter, her coming into our home at 14, turning 15. Yes, there was a large portion of her life that we had to step into, and we're still stepping into, and we're still trying to, kind of weed out all of the different things that she had experienced, that she had come to understand and know, and to help her understand what to keep and what not to keep and why. And that is hard, but that would be no harder than when we used to have a young school-age child and what I like to dub as tween in our home. It was no harder back then for those two, because again, at 7 and 10, you're still dealing with 7 years and 10 years of that child's life. There's huge brain development that has already occurred and personality traits that have kind of already solidified. And for many of you who are practicing counselors or who have specialized in psychology, I do know about the personality and characteristics really kind of becoming the core part, solid part of us at 12. But at 10 and 7, you are beginning to see, really kind of who that kid is, and more or less like what their likes and dislikes are, even though that obviously does change over time. But by no means is a kid at 14, 15, or 16, or 17 or 18, by no means are they beyond hope. They're not. Because my husband and I have fostered newborns and toddlers and school-age kids, and all at different times, all at different ages, and it was insane every single time. And I will fully admit that I had an emotional breakdown every single time. um, you know, having a teenager in the home, I think the greatest gift that we had and we still have which has made the transition so much smoother, is that as a teenager, we are able to communicate to this person, even if they are emotionally regressed. When she came in at 14, and she turned 15 not so long after, she was half that age. So she was between 7 and 9 years old, give or take, when she was experiencing what we call our emotional dips, when we are angry and sad and depressed and disgruntled and all of that. She would be between 5 and 7. Now, almost 8 months later, she regresses down to, I would say, an 8 to 10-year-old level when she's experiencing the emotional dips. On her really good days and relatable days to others, she's between 11 to 13 years old, give or take. Preferably probably 12 to 13. So that right there already kind of shows you just the significant improvement that she's made. And that's including all of the mistakes that I feel like I've made as a parent. And Sean probably feeling like maybe he's made a few mistakes here and there, because I can't speak for him. But this doesn't mean that we haven't been able to make a difference, because we are making a difference. And every day, I provide her different teachings as a woman and things to consider as a woman. Because one of the things that I know about her past, which I am being very methodical about in her life, is how to be strong and self-confident, and to appreciate herself and her body, and to really cherish both, and to really try to understand who she is as an individual, because I really don't feel like at all that she was encouraged to really appreciate and understand her identity. And at 15, this is that age and stage where teenagers and tweens are really trying to understand their identity. And they do so with their peers. But because she is not socially where she should be at 15, and emotionally in a different level as well. So those are two very different, aspects to working with older kids, is that you're going to be dealing with emotional regression. You're also going to be dealing with social regression as well. You may have some children who are overly sociable, some who are somewhere in between introvert and extrovert, and then you have some who are very introvert, but might actually be more extrovert than they realize. And so there may be a lot of fear associated with all of that. So that's, that kind of in turn creates a sense, or, if it is diagnosable, social anxiety. So, is it worth it? Is it doable? Is it, where you can really help, mold and form the child into someone that can function in life? Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. But I will tell you that, I am just as exhausted and I get just as frustrated as I ever did when we had much, much younger kids in our home. And so does this require the same amount of patience and temperance and research and worrying and concerns? Yes, absolutely. And this is kind of going a little bit longer than I expected, so I'll try to wrap it up. But to kind of respond to a couple of statements about people who try to adopt teenagers, I will definitely debunk a couple of statements there. One, no, none of us who actually make the choice of trying to adopt a teenager, or even fostering a teenager, none of us are trying to skip the stages of early childhood. You will experience that. I would say for the first few months of her being in our home, and when she really finally got comfortable with us, those very young ages that I explained to you guys a little bit earlier about when she regressed or where she was emotionally, and then when she would regress because she was experiencing that emotional dip. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. We had to definitely my husband and I, we had to kind of walk backwards and remind ourselves, what is it like to actually work with a younger child? Because, it had been a little while for us. And so does that mean that they're going to be like that forever? No, that doesn't. That just means that it's just going to take a little bit longer for them to launch than, say, a child that may have been biologically born to you, and not have experienced some form of significant trauma. But remember, trauma can be anything from, from in the womb to something, as simple as a horrible, terrible tornado. And I know tornadoes are not simple, but it could be a natural disaster, and that can still alter the course that child was originally on. And so they don't have the additional trauma of foster care or anything else like that. So that's just to kind of help put that into perspective, into light there. So, bottom line, the adoption is scheduled for either next week, but if that is rescheduled because of COVID-19, then that would be probably scheduled for at least the end of July to beginning of August. We are here in Texas. We are definitely dealing with a huge surge increase for COVID-19. And it has definitely been a roller coaster ride for sure. As a family here, how we're handling that, we're still pretty minimal on who we see and where we go and what we do. And I will say that that's probably not going to change for a while. We are, as a family, discussing the option, I should say. I don't know if it's an opportunity. The option of our daughter staying home and doing the remote learning option that the school district is providing. I know that my husband and I are still really more discussing that amongst the two of us because, obviously we do want to try to encourage our daughter to practice socialization, which she does lack a lot in, and she does have pretty intense social anxiety. So remote learning puts a huge hindrance in something like that. But we also have to listen to the therapists that are in our life and the doctors that we are having to work alongside with as we are trying to navigate how to help her, because you can go too fast too soon, and that can backlash on you. And those are some of the mistakes I've made as a person, because I'm the kind of person that likes to, I'm so used to the hurry up and wait, and that isn't always the case with trauma, and helping people heal, because healing journeys are different. So that's kind of a little update for us on the COVID-19. We are definitely wearing our mask. We're practicing social distancing, but more importantly, if you guys are in the process of considering trying to adopt or foster a teenager, if you are also trying to consider what would be best for your family as far as remote learning or face-to-face, I'm not going to tell you which one is right. I'm just letting you know kind of what we're thinking about, but there are a lot of reasons why my husband and I are discussing the pros and cons to both. We have not made a decision because there are pros and cons to remote learning versus face-to-face. And there are a lot of concerns too, not just with the virus, but also with, how does this affect our family? How does this impact our child, et cetera, et cetera. So all I want to say there is, just take your time with this decision. This is a big one. Fortunately, most schools don't start until mid to late August, so we do have a little bit of time, but hopefully this will provide you, if you are struggling with that decision, this will provide you a little bit of reprieve, knowing that there are other families such as us who are still trying to figure out what they would like to do for the upcoming school year of 2020 to 2021. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for tuning in. I'm so sorry this was a much longer video than I expected. Hopefully you got something out of it. I cannot tell you when the next video is going to be because, like I said, our life is it's just constantly moving, even though we're very minimal in who we see and what we do. I'm not sure how that works out, but it is. But I will do everything I possibly can to hopefully put in another video in the next couple of weeks. All right, guys, I will talk to you later.